Welcome, everybody. For those who are here for session 3, welcome back. And for those who are new, welcome. My name is Stephanie Moser, and I am a social worker in Peterborough, Ontario. I mostly work with autistic folks. And so some of the things that I talk about are things related to sexuality and puberty and menstruation, periods, all that sort of stuff. Because it's really important. Those are things that sometimes people are embarrassed talking about. So I just want to normalize and say that I recognize that sometimes these things are, even though they shouldn't be, some people feel embarrassed talking about them. So I'll do the talking, and you can listen. So thanks for being here. I'm going to just get started and move on to the next slide. Yeah, so we're going to talk about getting older. We probably have a range of people watching this of ages. So some people may be in their teens and some people may be younger. So some of this people have already maybe started to go through, and some may be on the beginning path to moving into puberty. But what this means is getting older does mean that your body has or will start changing. So body shape, body size. So people develop breasts, and then begin getting their periods. So it can be confusing, all these changes. And sometimes with these changes too come different emotions. Sometimes emotions feel a little bit, more intense, and that can be confusing as well. But everybody goes through it. So you aren't the only one. People of different bodies go through it in different ways. We're going to be talking today about people who have breasts and vaginas. So that's the people I'm talking to today. It's also okay to be confused. I'm not expecting that everybody is, but some people may be confused. And it's okay to ask questions, even if you feel embarrassed. So the more you ask questions, the easier it gets. The less embarrassed you may feel, the less uncomfortable it is. And interestingly, sometimes parents get embarrassed as well. Doesn't mean that you shouldn't ask the questions. Sometimes parents don't have all the answers either. Parents sometimes are learning as well. And if a parent or a caregiver doesn't have the answer for you that you have, hopefully you can ask them to look it up, or you can find the information together. So it gets easier the more you ask questions. We're going to be talking a lot, mostly about this, about periods, about why people get periods and things to expect. My goal is just to give you some information, so you feel you have a little bit more knowledge. So why do people get periods? So first of all, I'm sure many of you know this, but I'd like to say it just right off the bat, is you will see blood. And sometimes people get really nervous about this or worried. Blood that comes out of your vagina every 4 weeks is a period. And that's not something to be scared about or worried about. It's normal. It doesn't mean that you're hurt. It doesn't mean that you're injured. What it does mean, so why does this happen? So as a person with a uterus and a vagina gets older, their body changes. So as we're talking about during puberty, your body changes. And part of your body changing is to enable your body to grow a baby inside your uterus. So what I want to make sure I say here is that doesn't mean just because you get a period doesn't mean there's going to be a baby inside your body. That happens when people have sexual intercourse with another person. So penis and vagina sex can result in pregnancy, in babies. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about that today, but that's what may at times cause a pregnancy. And there's different ways that people can, if people want to have that type of sex, there's different ways that people can prevent that from happening. So just because you get a period doesn't mean that you're going to have a baby. But it's biologically the body's way of getting prepared in case that ever was something that somebody wanted. So when there is no fetus, so no baby developing inside the uterus, the uterine wall, so that where the baby grows, comes off, And as part of what comes off there is bleeding. So the blood comes out of the vagina, and each month, if there's no pregnancy, if there's no baby growing in the uterus, the body, about once a month, the body creates a new uterine wall. So that's why this happens each month. So what to expect? So really important to know that not everyone gets them at the same age, gets your first period at the same age. There's usually a range, some older, some younger. Usually it says 11 to 15, 10 to 15-year-olds, tends to be the average time. What average means is that's where most people, some people may be a little bit younger, some people may be a little bit older. And you may be 13 and don't have your period yet. And that's normal. And you may be 10 and already have your period. And that's normal too. So there's all these things that are normal. And it's going to be different than your friends or other people your age. Usually, so the first thing that happens, the first body change that people notice is people's breasts begin to develop. And that itself can be a little uncomfortable. Physically, it can feel a little uncomfortable and can be confusing. But again, it's normal. And people usually get their first period about a year or two after that. So sometime within a year or two after that. Sometimes people like to, I don't think I put this in the slide, sometimes people like to, be prepared ahead of time, not wait to the first period to talk about, pads that you can use that you can put in your underwear. So you put pads in your underwear. So when bleeding starts, it doesn't stain your pants. It doesn't stain your underwear. It may sometimes, that happens sometimes. But pads help that. Period underwear can help that as well. And so sometimes people like to put pads in their backpack on the way to school, have period underwear available at home ahead of time. So those are things that you can talk to your parents or caregivers about. So how often and how long? So it's usually about every 4 weeks. So not once a month, but like every 28 days, usually. It can be a little bit longer. It can be a little bit shorter. At the beginning, sometimes it takes a little bit longer to be called what we say to have to regular periods. So sometimes there can be some real difference between that. If you started getting your period and you're getting it about every 4 weeks, and then you don't get it for a long period of time, probably nothing to worry about. Or if you're getting it more often, probably totally fine. But those are things that you should tell a caregiver about, because sometimes those are things you need to talk to doctors about. So make sure you let people know that. How long does it last? So each time you get your period, so again, you get it when you get it. The first time you have your period, you'll get about every 4 weeks afterwards. And you'll have it for, a couple of days up to a week. So usually it's between 3 to 7 days. Some of those days, there may not be that much bleeding, and some of the days there may be more, and that's normal as well. It's normal to have different, we call it like heavier or lighter days, is normal. It may seem like a lot in terms of how much you bleed. These are the nitty-gritty details, how much you bleed. It may seem like a lot, but actually with each period, so within a month, it's actually only a few tablespoons of blood. So it seems like a lot, but it's not that much. I already mentioned this a little bit before, but people usually use pads or period underwear. They do, for people who where environmental aspects are important, or, feel really important and feel like something they want to think about. Some pads are what we call disposable. So you throw them in the garbage after you wrap them up, wrap toilet paper around them and throw them in the garbage. Some people use cloth pads, are more accessible these days, and those are things that you would wash in the washing machine, and you can reuse. Period underwear is relatively new, so that's underwear that can absorb liquid, can absorb the blood. On really heavy days, the period underwear probably is not good enough. They're probably, you may leak through that, but that's also something that you don't throw out, but you can wash. Tampons are go into your body. They go into your vagina, as do menstrual cups. So they're internal. Sometimes people, when they first get their period, doesn't feel like something they want to try right away, and that's fine. Some people never like to. And sometimes, as people are getting more used to having periods, they may want to try tampons and menstrual cups. That takes a little bit of practice. It may feel a little bit uncomfortable at the beginning, but many people get used to that. So it may be helpful to try a few different options out to see what's most comfortable to you. When you are, if you're at school, most people will, change if they're using pads. Many people will change pads during the day at school or tampons. And sometimes people are embarrassed about how you bring that to the bathroom. It's okay to have a little purse or just stick something in your pocket. And you think everybody's going to notice. Really often people don't notice. So those are okay things to do. What else should you expect? So sometimes your stomach may hurt a bit, sometimes a little bit more. Each person is different. So some people have no, what they call cramps at all. So lower sort of pains in your abdomen. That's sort of your uterus. The reason it happens is that's your uterus, they call it contracting to when the uterine lining is coming out. And that can cause cramps. For some people, that can be pretty painful. And so if it is, make sure you let a caregiver know, because sometimes people take medicine if it hurts a lot. They may take like a painkiller of some sort if it hurts a lot. Sometimes people find warm baths or hot water bottles if that feels okay sensory wise. That can sometimes help. The other thing that's normal is people can feel a bit more moody or sad than usual before their periods. So your hormones can cause some mood, what we call fluctuations, so ups and downs. And some people on the spectrum may be more likely to experience meltdowns before their periods and when their mood is shifting. So, sometimes it's helpful to track that, have a parent help you, or you do it with an app to see, am I more likely to have a meltdown or a shutdown at certain times during the month. And then that can also help you kind of be kind to yourself, maybe have less expectations of yourself, maybe tell your parents, that you need a little bit more downtime. And also for people who may have difficulty with sensory input, so like lights or sounds or textures of clothes, some people also find that they may be more sensitive to some of that before or around their periods. So just to be aware of that's normal as well. And it's something that could happen. Different cultures and different families feel differently about wearing bras and wearing different types of bras. Most people that you'll go to school with will, when their breasts begin to develop, will wear bras or tank tops. So when young people and teens begin to develop their breasts, people often decide to wear something underneath their shirts or their dresses for the day. Some people find it really comfortable to do that, more comfortable to have a bra or a tank top on or something like that. Some people find it less comfortable. So it's going to be important again to find something that works for you. Different tank tops, different bras, sports bras. Finding a texture that's good for you, something with less seams. So it may take a little bit of experiment to find what you're most comfortable with. It may take a little bit of time to get used to, and that's okay. That's okay that's going to take some time. Thankfully, all these changes happen over time. That's the other thing I really want to make sure. It's not like one day you have breasts the day before. It's not like one day your breasts developed the day before they hadn't developed at all. It all happens over time and not all at once. And because it happens over time, it gives you a bit of time to get used to these changes, right? It gives you a bit of time to get used to it and to tolerate some of it as well. Self-care, hygiene, those sorts of things are always really important. I know some of the people I work with have a hard time remembering, just scheduling, remembering to put on deodorant. It's not that they don't want to, they just don't even think about it. If it's a new habit or a new routine. Sometimes people, don't want to shower for lots of different reasons. Sometimes people don't want to wash their face or brush their teeth for lots of different reasons. Sometimes it's just falling out of routine. Sometimes people feel like, well, I don't really care. But it is important to, as you're moving into and through puberty, to recognize that you're going to sweat more. And because of that alone means that you need to make sure that you're showering and bathing. And also when you get your period, it's also for hygiene, it's a good thing to shower and bathe regularly. Yeah, so due to sweat glands, many people begin to develop what's called, as you're probably familiar with, body odor when they move into their teenage years. That some people develop it more than others. That's just a biological, genetic piece of it. And some people develop body odor earlier or later. So many people often decide to put deodorant or antiperspirant on under their arms because this can help with sweating and odor. Again, that may, if you have some sensory stuff, may take a bit of getting used to and trying different ones out. Some people use spray. Some people use roll-on. Some people use stick deodorant. So lots of different things, and that's something that you can experiment with too, and to see what's helpful. Also, if you have sensory stuff around fragrances, figuring out low fragrance or what's going to be tolerable to you. So all those sorts of things to think about. And showering. So showering regularly with soap and water is also obviously very, very helpful and important for hygiene. We also know we've always known that washing hands are important. During the past couple of years with COVID, that's really been reinforced. So we want to make sure that we're doing that regularly throughout the day after you use the washroom, after being out, that you're washing your hands. In terms of showering, it can sometimes be hard to remember to shower and what to do in the shower. So washing hair, often people will have multiple showers a week, but may not wash their hair every shower. It's important to wash your hair at least a couple times a week. Some people wash their hair regularly, but it's important to write down the steps or to have someone write them down for you, so you get used to, washing, soap and water, washing all parts of your body, having, washing your hair, using conditioner. So lots of people do try to shower every day. Not everybody, lots of people do. But if not, at least 2 to 3 times a week. Oh, I said 2 to 3 times a day there. I apologize. That would be excessive showering. But 2 to 3 times a week, people tend to shower. And so that's something to think about as well, at kind of at a minimum. I really wanted to thank you for taking the time to listen and coming online. And I know there's going to be a question and answer afterwards, and hopefully I can answer questions that you have. These conversations are really, really important. And the more we have them, the more we talk about puberty. We didn't talk very much about sexual health today, but the more we talk about puberty and things to expect, the easier those conversations are going to be. And the more we can take sort of some independence around some of these things. So thanks very much. Bye. Hi, everybody. Thanks for the people who joined us today. As you're well aware from just seeing me online, my name is Stephanie Moser, and I'm a social worker here in Peterborough, Ontario. I also want to thank people for patience. I know there's a little bit of technical glitching at the beginning that caused the need to restart things. So thanks for your patience, and hopefully most of you were able to watch. One person I didn't introduce in the presentation, because she's a more recent addition, is Lauren Portagen, who's here with us. And I'm wondering, Lauren, if you could introduce yourself to the people who are watching.
Yeah, absolutely. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. So yes, my name is Lauren Portagen. I work in child and youth mental health in Waterloo region. I am also an autistic person. And I know I might not be exactly what you anticipate as an autistic person. I am very neurotypical passing, and that's something that I do recognize. I do have lots of different autistic experiences. Happy to answer some questions about that too, but wanted to let you know that I am autistic and happy to share this space with Stephanie and all of you today.
Thanks, everybody. So, Lauren and I have access to the questions that you will be typing. So I know there's some parents watching and caregivers. I know there's some young folks as well. So yeah, so if there's any young folks, we definitely want to prioritize those questions. And so this one is first directed towards Lauren, as I expect many of them will be, which is fantastic. So it says, when you were, oh, good question. When you were first told about your period, what would you have changed or wish could have been done differently?
Oh,
Was there a better way to have been told or pictures? So yeah, maybe Lauren, if you're comfortable answering that.
absolutely. I would have changed a lot. I think both from an autistic perspective and just the kind of time frame that I grew up in. I was educated by my mom handing me a book. I love reading. I do not mind doing research and, more analytical type ways of people explaining things to me. But I had a lot of questions and didn't feel like there was a safe space for me to get those answers and someone that could hold explaining what was happening to my body. And so I remember feeling quite confused. So for youth that are watching, I would encourage you, if you do have safe spaces where you can ask some of these questions. I know it can feel awkward. I know it can feel uncomfortable. Society says that, oh, this is embarrassing. It's not. All bodies do this. And so uh, if you do feel safe, I would encourage you to connect with somebody that you trust to ask these questions to. I know that can feel uncomfortable though. And for any caregivers that are watching, same thing. I know it can also feel uncomfortable and embarrassing to ask these questions, but I think it's really important to just have open and honest conversations about it, because a lot of things I think are just assumed that people just don't know. I wish I had a presentation like this. Stephanie in the video mentioned that she mentioned that, when people start to wear bras or different tank tops, as a sensory person, it took me a long time to find a bra that felt okay on my body. Same with menstrual products, pads, cups, all of that stuff. I needed time and I needed safe spaces to experiment with what worked for my body and what felt good from a sensory perspective, which was something I didn't think of and wasn't really told to me as an autistic person of what I might expect or need. And so, yeah, coming at it from this space of curiosity from both sides, youth and caregivers, but also just anticipating that it's going to take time and some experimenting, and that means it's going to be uncomfortable. And so, in light of that, making sure that there's lots of space for self-care and things that you can do to take care of yourself in a potentially challenging time.
Thank you. And I did also want to highlight for some of the caregivers who may be watching here. There is also just so we are going to be sort of prioritizing questions maybe specifically to children and youth, because there is, I believe it's number 2, I think. There is, it's either one or two. Earlier in the webinar series, there was one geared specifically to parents and caregivers about what to expect around periods, around puberty. And so please feel free to go back onto Autismontario's site and you'll be able to get that. And there's some really good questions and answers about what to expect, how to help people who may be who may be less verbal and may need some more support. So feel free to please go back to that. I
Sorry,
also,
Stephanie, just to
yeah,
interject, I wanted to throw in too, with folks that I've supported before or families that I've supported before, sometimes the use of storyboards or social stories can be really helpful. So more visuals than explanations, and social stories in terms of what to expect. This is how it might feel. And that can be done with as many words as you want or more visuals if needed. And I think sometimes that could be helpful. So I don't want it to sound like books are bad. In my experience of being handed a book and, learn yourself, books can be really good. And I think storyboards and social stories can be really helpful too.
Yeah, and I was going to, for one of the questions was about that, about how to sort of support somebody who may have less verbal ability and may not be fully toilet trained themselves, but how to support them through this process. Um, and so yeah, I was going to say exactly what Lauren was talking about. So using lots of visuals, using pictures of of menstrual products, using like real pictures, showing people if you're the one who's going to be supporting somebody and changing their pads, if that's what you're using, or changing their period underwear. You can do that in a story. You take pictures of it ahead of time. You can give as much sort of information in visual ways as possible. It's also really helpful, to do it to start ahead of time. So this is a great question. Are periods different for autistic people versus neurotypical people? Fantastic question. I'm not sure if the person who asked it is a young autistic person themselves or a family member, but for I so anecdotally, and so what that means in terms of anecdotally means the stories that I have heard from people that I work with is yes, it is can be a little bit different. The reasons why they happen, the process of it happening, the bleeding is the same for everybody. One thing that does seem to be, and some of the research is saying this, that seems to be a little bit different is some of the stuff that we talked about in the webinar. So it seems to be that some autistic people may have more impact to their mood than neurotypical people. Seems that some autistic people may have more issues with pain and cramping than neurotypical people. So there's again some research happening, but there seems to be a little bit more challenges, unfortunately, in terms of pain and mood, which is why, if possible, it's really great to track your period, so you kind of know when that's going to be happening. If you have a pretty regular period, a regular period means like every 28 to 32 days, something like that. And to be, as I said in the webinar, to know that those are times that maybe you should be a little bit more kind to yourself, lower your expectations. It may be times, that it's possible if you are somebody prone to meltdowns or shutdowns, that may be a higher risk time for one of those experiences. Again, I should say, if I can't remember if I said it in the video, I am neurotypical. So I wonder if Lauren can talk about, if you think, I mean, you don't know what it's like to be neurotypical. If you think, from what you've heard, if you may have more sensory issues and things like that, at different times of the month.
Absolutely. I was sitting here chuckling because that lines up entirely with how I feel. I think for me, I do experience bigger mood changes. I also experience a whole lot of pain, and I'm sorry, youth, if that's scary. I think sometimes it's very much related just to the capacity I have and sensory overload. So for me, specific types of pain can be really sensory overwhelming than others. One of those types of pains is cramping type pains. And so, anecdotally, whether that's autism connection to heavier, more complex periods, or whether it's my threshold for certain types of pain, like, I don't know, but I have read similar research of those connections being made. But yes, I do find I'm in more pain, which then, and not just cramps, like my whole body aches, right? Like there's stuff like that happens related to my period that's not necessarily what you think of classically as like period pain. And that just eats away at my capacity. And then that just makes me more prone to meltdowns or shutdowns. And so it is something where I do track my period, and I track when it's going to start, because about 5 days before is when I start to feel a little more low mood. I start to have less capacity. I start to have some more pain, which reduces my capacity even more. And so I'm a big advocate for tracking your periods as much as possible. And again, just being kind to yourself. And so it took me a while to get there, but instead of blaming myself for feeling this way, why can't I, what's wrong with me? That kind of should type narrative. It took me a while to get there, but now I do my best to just go, oh, this means my period's coming. I guess I need to have a couple more, cozy times on the couch with my hot water bottle. And so lots of self-compassion, and just looking at what my experiences are with a bit more curiosity than judgment.
Thank you. And a question here, which I think a lot of tweens, teens have this question. So this is a young person who asked this. How do you know if you have your period? Like if I'm sitting in class, how do I know everybody won't see blood when I stand up? And I think that's a really common question or worry that autistic people, neurotypical people, I remember I felt that way. So I think that's a common thing that comes up. Usually, I mean, I'm not going to say all the time, but usually, if you, at the start of your period, it's not like you're going to, typically you don't stand up and there are blood gushes everywhere. Like typically that's not happening at the beginning of a period. There may be sometimes where that happens. Usually it's at the beginning of a period, they call it a little bit lighter. So it's usually when you go to the bathroom and you wipe yourself after in the bathroom, there may be some blood on the toilet paper, there may be some blood in your underwear. Usually that's how you find out. Some people, I don't think it's uncommon, people have that worry. Some people, I remember when I was little, some people bring extra sweater just in case to tie around their waist. Some of those things to feel just lower some anxiety, if that was to happen. But typically people, it may start a little bit slower, and if it doesn't, it always feels like a bigger deal than it actually is. So if it does, if there is some blood on your pants or on your shorts, sometimes it's okay to, maybe if it makes you feel better, throw an extra pair of shorts or pants or whatever into your bag, an extra sweater to tie around your waist. I don't know, Lauren, do you have anything else to add to that?
No, I do want to emphasize the idea that it's not as big of a deal as you think it is. Not to minimize that it is scary and it's a new thing and it's a change, but it's also something that every menstruating body does. And so I guarantee there are other people within that space, whether it's at school or something like that, who are going through or have gone through a similar thing. I also had a change of clothes in my bag, or a sweater or extra pads around just in case. As I moved through puberty, I started to get more comfortable with what it was. And so it felt less like a big sudden change and more of just, okay, my period's coming. Sometimes even once you get your period, starting to track it can be helpful too, because sometimes there's other things that you might notice or feel in your body that happen just before you get your period. And so sometimes, whether that's cramps or body aches or something like that, if you track how you're feeling physically, you might notice some patterns of what's happening just before you have your period. And that's a time where even now I look at my little calendar in my notes and I go, oh, my period's coming. And I throw an extra pad in my work bag or something like that. So I'm ready if it does show up unexpectedly.
Thank you. And somebody asked there about a good social storybook or good book. So good resource has lots of visuals and ideas. I can't remember if I mentioned it in this, it's in the handouts. But it's the Autism Friendly Guide to Periods. And it's in the handouts, and there's a book that's fantastic. The book was written by an autistic person themselves. The website has a lot of fantastic resources, a lot of visuals, a lot of ways to explain things. And because it was written by an autistic person, it's exceptionally well done. So I would strongly recommend that. And I think the handout section is being a little bit buzzed there. So thank you. So do check that out. I think that, it's in there. And the website is, sorry, I hope I do this, it doesn't get you, is autismfriendlyperiods.com. So that's the website. So definitely check that out for a really good resource. I do also really want to highlight, I mentioned it in the video I did at the beginning, that families, culture, there different cultures don't always use, and this is for everybody to know, just to be inclusive and understanding. So in different cultures and different communities, in different families, wearing deodorant is not done all the time. And so we just as people too, we want to be inclusive of people who have different ways of doing things and different practices. Some folks, are not as comfortable wearing bras or tank tops or sports bras. So I think it's just really important for all of us to be inclusive and understanding of the different ways that people express themselves and the different things that they need. Just scrolling through to see.
The one thing I wanted to add while you're scrolling, Stephanie, for me, I'm a very tactile person. I think I learn best by jumping in there and doing it. And so, as much as I think when I first got my period, I would have appreciated more space to have conversations and ask questions, I also, I think my mom did kind of clue in that that's maybe what I needed at a certain point. But what I really appreciated is that she laid out all of the options of tools that I could use, tampons, pads, menstrual cups weren't a thing yet, but and so it, and I was allowed to look at them, touch them, that kind of thing, see how they worked. And so I think that was helpful because it made me feel less surprising of this new thing is happening to my body and I have to use this thing that I've never seen before. And so for folks who might also be visual learners or tactile learners, if it's an okay sensory thing, it might be worth just seeing if you can kind of explore what those tools look like before you're in a position where you want to use them.
Yeah, and I think I said in the video, another new thing is a period underwear that really wasn't around when I was little. I don't think when Lauren was either. That for some people that I work with find that really helpful sensory wise. But also to know that you have to change those regularly and wash them and all those sorts of things. So those are important to know as well. I was going to say something else and it just left my mind. I just want to make sure there's no more questions. If not, we may end shortly. Let me just see.
I was going to add too. Is there any?
Go ahead.
I was just going to see if anybody had questions about shower habits. I think, Stephanie, I appreciated your reminders of scheduling it or making even a storyboard for that of this and then kind of steps. I think for me, depending on where I'm at capacity wise and sensory wise, I have to factor showering in because I know it's important and I know I need to do it for my hygiene. And for the benefit of other people, so I don't smell for the people that I'm around. But I do have to kind of make sure I have enough capacity left and balance adding that in because sometimes just the water is sensory overwhelming. Sometimes it gets confusing because sometimes that can be a really good sensory thing. And so I do have to keep in mind just reserving a little bit of capacity so that there is space to do that. And that was something that, again, I wasn't really taught or told about as a kid. It was just like time for a shower, that kind of thing. And so when you have a little bit more space of, I want to shower, I don't want to shower, it can be really easy to get into a pattern of, well, I don't want to shower. That feels uncomfortable sensory wise. And so being creative with other ways that you can be clean. And for me, that works in ways of maybe I have a bath instead of a shower, or maybe I just monitor how much capacity I have to make sure that it's still something I can do because it is very important.
And I think we are going to say goodbye now. I'm just looking at some no more questions have come in. So it seems like a good time to thank everybody for being here. I know it's it's a conversation that's important. It doesn't happen as much as maybe it should. So do check out the resources and the handouts. This series will be on demand as well. So you can watch it again and go back to the other webinars as well. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you.